Stephen Rice is the Australian's New South Wales editor, and in the wake of Sunday's Bondi Beach massacre, Ricey, you've been looking at the history of Naveed Akram. He's the 24-year-old, allegedly the younger shooter involved in the Bondi attack. There is vision of someone, reportedly Naveed Akram, firing a high-powered rifle at Jewish men, women and children at Bondi Beach. He's now been pictured and reported to have associations with people who were associated with the Islamic State terror movement in the years before 2025. Let's start at the beginning, and it's important to say that Naveed Akram has not been convicted of any crimes. He's only just been charged. It's likely that he will face a criminal process where, of course, he will have the right to plead not guilty and be judged accordingly. What do we know about Naveed Akram's first interaction with someone who we might describe as having links to terror ideology?
Well, we know that back in 2019, as a very impressionable 17-year-old, he was drawn into this, what you might call a circle of influence among people who definitely had links with Islamic State, and in fact a couple of them were convicted of being members of Islamic State, recruiters for Islamic State, and this all occurred around something called the Dawa Street movement. It was a collection of Islamic, you might say extremist Islamists who preached in the streets trying to convert people to Islam. Now, some of them clearly were doing more than that behind the scenes. One of them in particular was a guy called Isaac al-Matari. He was not only an Islamic State operative, but was the self-declared head of the Islamic State in Australia. Now, we know for a fact that he was a friend of Akram at around this time in 2019, while they were preaching on the streets, they were clearly behind the scenes up to other things. And as well as El-Matari, there was another individual called Yusuf Uwanate. Now, Uwanate was arrested only a few months after he and Naveed Akram were photographed together, and in today's paper we have a photograph of the two of them together. Now, not long after they were photographed together, Uwanate was arrested by counter-terrorism police. They broke through his door, and Uwanate tried to smash his phone. He even cut his hand on the glass from the phone, trying to get rid of this evidence. And when the police unlocked the phone, they found some really disturbing stuff. Like Uwanate has appeared to have kind of obsession with beheadings. His phone was just full of beheading videos that he had sent around to his very young followers. And the phone also, revealed that some of the people who he was preaching this stuff to were children, and obviously very impressionable children, but they were going along with the stuff that he was putting out.
These were young guys. Isaac al-Matari, the person who was convicted and who called himself ISIS's leader in Australia, he was convicted of plotting a terror attack. He talked about attacking landmarks in Sydney. He was only around 1920 when all this was going on. Naveed Akram would have only been around the same age as well. And this is one of the features of Islamic State, isn't it, Ricey? Without commenting in particular on these individuals, Islamic State rose in 2014 in Syria and the Middle East, preaching a form of Sunni jihadist ideology, Wahhabist ideology, that is about the elimination of Jews, the elimination of the West and Western influences. They wanted to establish a caliphate. And online recruiting was one of their most powerful tools. That's where we've seen foreign fighters who went to Syria to fight with ISIS. They were radicalised on what was then called Twitter, weren't they, with beheading videos?
Yeah, that was online was the biggest source of recruits for fighters going to Syria to fight with Islamic State, and a couple of the most famous Australians, including one who held up severed heads to the camera, Mohammed El Amar and Khaled Sharif, were friends with Wissam Haddad, who's the guy who runs this Al Medina Dawa Centre, which is another crucial stepping stone, another block in this chain of influence. Haddad, you'll remember, was the hate preacher who was found just earlier this year to have vilified Jews, was calling Jews despicable names, and was found to have breached the Discrimination Act. He was a friend of these characters, and he also knew Naveed Akram. We don't know what passed between Haddad and Naveed Akram, but we do know that there was an association.
Very early on in the aftermath of the Bondi Beach massacre, there were reports subsequently confirmed by ASIO that at one point Naveed Akram was on ASIO's radar. There's no suggestion that his father, Sajid Akram, who was killed at the scene of the Bondi massacre, was on ASIO's radar, but Naveed Akram certainly was for a period of time. And what officials have said is that he was picked up or looked at in association with Isaac el-Matari, the guy who claimed to be ISIS's leader in Australia, but that they determined that he wasn't planning anything, that he hadn't actually committed any crimes or was planning any crimes. And so the fact that he was in ASIO sites kind of went nowhere. We know that he then got a job as a bricklayer, or he was working as a bricklayer, and that he had been out of work. What's now emerged is that Naveed and Sajid Akram travelled to the Philippines in November this year, 2025. Now, that seems benign until you think about the fact that the Philippines is where ISIS has come closest to Australia.
Yeah.
In the province of Mindanao, in particular the city of Marawi, ISIS-associated militias have been fighting the Philippines government. At one point, they took over an entire city. Now, Philippines police and the army and the government say that ISIS has dwindled to almost nothing in the Philippines, that they've really been reduced to nothing, that there's no evidence that they're holding terror training camps or whatever. So what do we think Naveed Akram was doing there?
Well, I mean, the assumption certainly is that he and his father went there for military training. Some of this is easy to say with the benefit of hindsight. Clearly, Naveed Akram was on ASIO's and the AFP's watch lists for some time, but it's also clear that neither of those organisations has the manpower to continually monitor the activities of marginal, or what were then regarded as marginal players. Now, having said that, you might have thought that, when somebody who was, some time ago on a watch list, and whose father is known to, have a large collection of guns, might have, twigged somewhere, but clearly it didn't. Again, I think it's important to say that the AFP in particular was very under-resourced at this point. That they just weren't able to keep an eye on all the people that they wanted to.
Yeah, agencies of policing, like the New South Wales Crime Commission, for example, they have agents who spend all their time listening to their targets. They have listening devices in cars, in houses, in businesses. and they have human intelligence as well. That is incredibly resource intensive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do we think ASIO and the AFP have the resources to do that for everybody who's on a watch list?
Oh, they definitely don't. But I suspect that even if they had vastly increased resources, that somebody like Naveed Akram might have been on the outer edge anyway of the people that they were really interested in. He was very young at the time, and I think after 2019 seems to have very successfully gone underground, or at least kept himself out of mischief. Again, with the benefit of hindsight, maybe there was a good reason for that.
On Wednesday, Josh Frydenberg, the former federal Liberal Treasurer, made an incredibly powerful speech at Bondi Beach with a list of things that he wants the federal government to do. Top of the list is banning hate speech and kicking radical hate preachers, as he described them, out of the country. That would be people like Wissam Haddad. He described Wissam Haddad's centre as a factory of hate. That's a phrase that we've heard also used by Senator James Patterson from the Liberal Party. Where do you think this is going to go, Ricey? Do you think that the federal government has got the guts or the will to crack down on freedom of speech in relation to these particular type of individuals?
I think they're going to be forced into very radical changes, not just to gun laws, but to discrimination, the kind of discrimination laws that we've seen brought against people like Wissam Haddad in the past are going to have to be tightened. The reality, though, is you can't kick Australian citizens out of the country. It's illegal. So no matter what political posturing may be occurring, and you can understand why people are angry, why people would like that to happen, but under our system of laws, you can't kick out Australian citizens, no matter what they've done. We can send them to jail if we can prove that they've encouraged terrorism, but we can't kick them out of the country.
Stephen Rice is the Australian's New South Wales editor. Thanks, Ricey.
Thank you.